Welcome, Lambton County Council members, members of the public, and media that are here and online. This is Budget Day 2025. I'd ask Ms. Leger to take the roll call, please.
Thank you, Warden. Deputy Warden Agar. Present. Councillor McEwen for Councillor Atkinson. Councillor Bushi. I'm here. Councillor Bradley. Councillor Broad. Present. Councillor Case. Present. Councillor Cook. Councillor Dennis. Present. Councillor Ferguson. Present. Councillor Hand. Present. Councillor Loosely. Present. Councillor McRoberts. Present. Councillor Miller. Present. Councillor Sageman. Present. Councillor Veen. Present. Councillor White. Present. Warden Marriott. Present. We have quorum.
Thank you. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabeg. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabeg with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. I'd ask any member of council to declare pecuniary interest now or where it may arise during the meeting. Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Please bear with me. This is all regarding EMS. In your binder, it's section 2, 3A, section 2, 4B, section 9, page 14, section 13, 47101, section 13, 47102, Section 13, 47103, Section 14, R7, Section 15, total expenditure, and on the agenda is 8, capital B, A, and B, due to the fact that my son works part-time for the EMS, and I've given the necessary paperwork to the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loosely. Anybody else? Seeing none, we just want to check the system. We had some audio problems when we were taking the roll call. So, Lisa, did you want to check that? Councillor Cook, could you test it for us, please? No, not yet. Can Councillor Cook and Bradley hear us? So that's a positive. We still can't hear you guys.
Oh, I like that.
Oh, come on, that's cute.
They can't hear, but they can hear us.
Yeah,
See?
yeah, they can hear you. They heard you.
You know that. I know.
Not really, I wasn't on speaker.
No.
I promise Councillor Cook and After that, please join me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask our MP, Marilyn Gladu, forward. She would like something she would like to do this morning. Welcome, MP Gladu. You can use that one if you like.
Sure. No, I think this is good.
Okay.
So, good morning. I'm here today to present a King Charles III Coronation Medal. These medals are being given to individuals that have made a significant contribution to the community or to our country or both. And this morning, Kevin Marriott, your warden, our warden, is going to receive this medal. He has served as the mayor of Enniskillen Township since 2011. His political career began in 1994 when he joined Enniskillen Township Council, serving as deputy mayor for 7 years before becoming mayor. In December 2024, he was acclaimed for his third consecutive term as Lambton County Warden, making him the county's longest-serving warden with 6 consecutive years in the role. During this time, he's prioritized addressing affordable housing and homelessness, infrastructure improvements, and economic growth within the county. Beyond his political commitments, he's a dedicated cash crop farmer. He has held leadership positions in various agricultural organizations, including past president roles in Lambton County Junior Farmers, the Conservation Club, Lambton County Soil and Crop Improvement Association, and additionally, he served as the provincial director of the Ontario Soybean Growers and Grain Farmers of Ontario from 2001 to 2013. Kevin's extensive experience in both municipal governments and agricultural sectors shows his commitment to the development and well-being of Lambton County and its residents. And so it is my great honor to present the King Charles III Coronation Medal to Kevin Marriott. You want to come down there? Okay. This is for you.
Thank you very much, Marilyn. It's a real honor, and I don't think I'm that deserving, but thank you very much. Okay. On to item number 8, 2025 budget deliberations. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Pilarchio to give an outline of the morning and how we will proceed with the budget. Mr. Pilarchio, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Yes, today's our 2025 budget deliberation day, and I want to give you just a real quick overview of the guideline of today's events. To start off, in front of you, you have 3 replacement pages that we've identified in the last couple of weeks. They're just minor typographical type errors. They're not, they don't impact the county levy at all, so those should be in front of you. In the interest of total fullness, transparency, and openness, we thought we'd provide these to you today. Okay, to start off the day, you have your budget document, and in your budget document, you have bylaw number 6 of 2025 has been prepared, referencing the 2025 PSAB compliant total expense and dollars to be raised. That can be found under tab 15, as well as under tab 1, it identifies the property taxes that will be raised. It's really important. Let me just give you a really rough overview of what I provided on February 19th as far as the budget is concerned. We recommended a 4.2% baseline budget increase pertaining to your base budget. On top of that, there was an additional contribution of approximately $600,000 for the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, which resulted in a total recommended tax levy from rate increase of 4.8%. So that's what's there in front of you today as far as in the budget binder. What has not been included are what we call exclusions or items referred to the budget, and there's basically 3 items that are detailed under tab 2 of the budget binder. Those 3 items, 2 pertain to the EMS. There's 2 EMS reports. The first report deals with additional hours and 4 FTEs in support of the EMS master plan, as well as the equipment requirements associated with that. The second EMS report pertains to a capital a budget request for new headquarters. The amount there is approximately $10.8 million, and the source of funding that we are suggesting, if council wishes to approve it, is $9.7 million from debt, as well as $1.1 million from EMS capital type reserves. The third item that's been referred to you and is not included in the 4.8% is a additional grant funding request from the CLCDC of approximately $900,000. It's something that needs to be looked at during today's deliberations. And there's, basically tax levy implications with the first item that would be referred, the additional hours that would bring the rate from like 4.8% to 5.4%. Our manager of divisional support services and her staff are here to record the financial impact of all motions in the county's budget minutes program that will be in front of you today. Should a recorded vote be requested, details of how each councillor votes and the result of the vote will be displayed by the county budget minutes program. Because neither the amount nor the funding required for the items referred to budget requests are currently included or reflected in the draft 2025 budget. When considering those items, council is asked to provide its directions in the form of specific motions. So if you want to add for EMS, a motion would be required. However, because the matters and expenditures outlined in the remainder of the draft budget, they're already included in the 4.8%. No motions are required unless you either want to add or delete from those budget amounts. Departmental managers are here from each division and are in attendance. Staff are not making any formal presentations, but instead will be available to answer any questions that county council may have. And should council require additional time beyond today's date, we also have a Wednesday, March 19th date that's currently scheduled for deliberations. And I think that's all I had for today. I'm happy to answer any questions throughout the process to guide you through today's deliberations.
Great, thank you for that, Mr. Pilarchio. And as he indicated, we'll deal first with items referred to budget. The first one under item B, A, is a report dated February 5th regarding the 2025 EMS service enhancement. And I think Mr. Pilarchio explained the numbers there, so I'd look to council for your direction. Councillor Broad. Councillor Broad moves. Councillor White seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. I'd ask Councillor Bradley if he would like to refer to his previous request for all recorded votes.
I wasn't putting that request forward today. I thought we'd do it on a basis when if someone wants to raise it, they can raise it.
Thank you. So that moves us to B, emergency medical services. It's tab 2, it's pages 7 to 12, report regarding the EMS headquarters development. Councillor White, please. You move it. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Dennis seconds. Discussion, Councillor Broad.
It's my pacemaker. Test, test. I'll just use Mr. Cases. It's an honor to sit over in his position here. And I pretty well can say whatever I want now because it'll be recorded as There we go. Felt great to be Todd Case for just a few seconds. Doesn't affect my vote on this at all. I'm definitely in favor of this, but I'm really trying to figure out why are we negotiating with ourselves on the lease agreement for this building. It's been very clear the County of Lambton owns the land. We are responsible for everything that goes on at the research park. So why are we negotiating a lease agreement with ourselves? It doesn't affect the vote today. I'm not going to put any staff on the spot, but if somebody could come back with a report and please explain to me why we're doing that. We wrote off millions of dollars because we were told that doesn't matter whether it belongs to the research park or the County of Lambton, we're still responsible. I'm just really curious why we're negotiating with ourselves. And again, I don't need a response from staff today, but if somebody could give me a report, that would be great.
I'll ask Mr. Tifo to respond, please.
Yes, thank you very much. In an effort to avoid a report, we can probably address that question at this point in time. Ultimately, the Corporation of the County of Lambton, this body, ultimately owns the corporation that is the research park. They are two separate corporations, separately managed, and accordingly, they are two separate bodies. But we do negotiate, much like any other third-party lease arrangements with the research park. However, to catch on and to respond directly to your question about sort of the financing that this organization supplies to the research park, I suspect that moving forward, that will definitely be taken into account when we enter into these negotiations. Again, subject, that may be our approach, but subject to the research park's board also reviewing that issue and addressing that issue. Hopefully that addresses your question.
Thank you, Mr. Tifo. Any other discussion before I call the vote? Seeing none, all in favor? Anybody opposed? That's carried. Item number C, the County of Lambton Community Development Corporation requests for an additional grant in the amount of $900,000 to assist in recovery efforts of the Western Sarnia-Lambton Research Park. Councillor Ferguson.
I don't support that particular motion. I would like to put a motion forward that we'd loan them the $900,000. It's on the book as a loan.
Okay, motion's on the floor. Do we have a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Case. Open it up to discussion. Councillor Bradley. You're muted, Councillor.
I understand the intent of the motion, but this will just push back further and further the need to have the direct assistance to get us back in a balanced situation where we can move forward the next couple of years. And a loan will it'll be like a boa constrictor around the park in the years ahead. So I certainly cannot support that. We've worked very hard at the Research Park board level. Turnaround plan, a lot of you had input on that last week. Let us get on with the next year or two and see if we can get it back to that positive 90% occupancy. And then if there's hard charges to be made down the road, we should make them then, not right now, and put more debt on the park.
Okay, any other discussion? Councillor Broad, please.
Thanks, Warden Marriott. I really have a problem with how this gets reported out. We're asking for they're asking for $900,000. What about the $600,000? Was not the agreement till April 2024 on that $600,000 grant that we were providing. This gets really clouded up. It doesn't seem to be out in the open. When people read this information, they think we're only supplying 900,000 with the part. Is it not 1.5 million?
I'd ask Mr. Pilarchio if he could explain, please.
Thank you for the question. In the interest of full openness and transparency, in 2024, the total grant that was provided was $2 million. In this year's budget, of that $2 million, there was about $650,000 that was base grant funding. And CLCDC came in last year with an additional $1.35 million request. For this year's budget, we continued with the base grant funding of approximately $650,000, and that's included in your 4.8%. There's an additional request of $900,000, which in total, the total funding that is part of today's budget deliberations is $1.5 million.
Follow up, Councillor Broad.
And thanks for that explanation, but unfortunately, it gets put in the social media, in the media, that it's so $900,000. That's all we hear about. Let's put the true value out there of what this is costing. We know that it cost $2 million last year, the funds that we provided, and yet briefing notes that we got from the research part thanks us for, I believe it was 1.35 million for 2024. We know that's not right. It was 2 million. But is what gets reported out. And I don't understand why the transparency isn't there, that we can't put those numbers all together so we know, and the public knows, this is public money. It's not mine, it's not yours, it's the public's money, that exactly what this facility is costing us. And I think we need to change how it gets reported out so the entire amount gets reported out each time instead of splitting into two separate grants. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Agar.
Deputy Warden. Good questions, Councillor. I just have one. So the contract was up in 2024 for the 600. So this is 2025. Is that 600 not on there, or is it still on there? Thanks.
Mr. Pilarchio, please.
Again, in the interest of openness and transparency, there's no agreement in place. The way we have our typical grants for the 2025 period. I believe it expires April 1st, 2025, which is part of last year's budget. So this is basically just the 650 that's in the base budget is on the assumption that there's a continuation of annual funding for the research part, base funding. The additional 900,000 is that additional request that they're asking for over and above the base.
Thank you for that. So I would suggest that maybe we have correspondence between the County of Lambton and the CLCDC requesting that the information coming out this year reflect the comments of Councillor Broad. Is that something we can do? Okay. Is there any other comments, Councillor Dennis?
Thank you, Warden Marriott. The closest that I can think of, like this research park has really morphed into a landlord. It kind of reminds me of the DMI building back. They had a rough time back in the 90s, like a lot of people did when we lost 6,000 good-paying jobs during that period of time. They struggled, and they reinvented themselves. And I don't know their current situation, but they struggled. It just shows you the difference between the private sector and the public sector. But I don't, like I say, if they were in the same situation, they wouldn't have government to bail them out. And they went through COVID just like everybody else. And, I know that we have a lot of money wrapped up in this dream, but let's face it, it hasn't turned out to what the original dream was. It's a landlord. And Councillor Case eloquently pointed out in a previous meeting, the only time it's really been successful is when it was rented out to a call center. you know, like I have some concerns. I really have concerns. We are competing against the private sector now when it comes to renting out to certain tenants that really have nothing to do with research and helping our economy incubate jobs for the new economy and so on. But I'm just, like I say, I have some concerns about this, anyways, that's where I am right now on that. So, like I said, we are talking about taxpayers' money, and I know that a place like the DMI building and some others around the county wouldn't have the same luxury to go to government to bail them out and keep them, give them another lifeline for a while. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments, do you want to hear the motion, Ms. Leger, please? Oh,
I was just going to ask that the motion be read. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Loosely.
I would just ask for clarity from the mover, Councillor Ferguson, with respect to how the loan is distributed, if it's going to be in incremental payments as it was presented in the February 19th meeting, or if it's one lump sum payment.
I'd like to see it put out the same way as proposed before, in the same one, but of course, loan. In the long term, if there is an end plan in there, the money does come back into the county proper, where the grant is gone. So I want to see that. I'd like to see a loan go in place. They're still going to get their money in the same increments. And even if it's at 0%, but it does sit there that we would get the money back in the long term.
Okay, Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, as I have no difficulty with what Mayor Broad had brought up. I mean, that just needs to simplify it so it's very straightforward. And I want to challenge some of the statements. The park was successful and had a variety of tenants. Origin Materials developed out of there and a number of other companies. It was COVID that eliminated a number of major companies, Nova, Enbridge in the building, and that created the cash flow problem. So they did what any group would do. And the county owns the asset and the city owns around the land around there. So the plan that's been adopted is to turn it around and move it back up to that 90% revenue. And, again, it's something that is generating jobs in the community. And if anyone has any understanding of research parks, that if you go to any research park, and we just had a briefing on that recently, the county did, it is composed of a lot of different interests. That's why the family counseling center's been there from day one. They helped, as did the call centers back then, pay for the cash flow so that we can get on with the research side of things. And that should not be forgotten. That's part of this picture. And I will be the one in a couple of years now, if we don't turn it around and get it to a sustainable position, we'll be saying, let's look at the nuclear option, which is to move away from supporting this project. However, if you want to look at the future of this community, it's Lambton College and it's the research park. So today's a good testament. It's going to be a bit of a rough ride to get to a better place, but we can do it. And that's why this county council has been very supportive over the years of the research park.
Okay, I would ask the mover and the seconder if you want your motion to stand as is. Yes, okay. So are we familiar now with the motion on the floor?
And a recorded vote on this one.
Oh, yeah. Ms. Leger is going to read it back, please.
So motion on the floor is moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Case, that council authorize a loan to the County of Lambton Community Development Corporation in the amount of $900,000 to be funded through the Economic Development Reserve, subject to the following conditions. That $225,000 be provided to CLCDC on or around April 15th, 2025. That $225,000 be provided to CLCDC on or around June 15th, 2025, subject to council's satisfaction of demonstrated need. That $225,000 be provided to CLCDC on or around September 15th, 2025, and that $225,000 be provided to CLCDC on or around December 15th, 2025, subject to council's satisfaction of demonstrated need, and that such loan be subject to a negotiated agreement between the organizations. And we have a recorded vote requested by Councillor Bradley.
So you just have to wait for the randomizer.
And we are starting with Counselor Hand. I have a yes.
No.
Counselor Loosely, I have a no. Counselor McRoberts? No. I have a no. Counselor Miller? Yes. I have a yes. Counselor Sageman? Yes. I have a yes. Counselor Bean? Yes. I have a yes. Counselor White? Yes. I have a yes. Deputy Warden Agar? Yes. I have a yes. Counselor McEwen for Counselor Atkinson? Yes. I have a yes. Counselor Bushi? Yes. I have a yes. Counselor Bradley?
No.
I have a no. Counselor Broad? Yes. I have a yes. Counselor Case?
Yes.
I have a yes. Counselor Cook?
Yes.
I have a yes. Counselor Dennis?
Yes.
I have a yes. Counselor Ferguson?
Yes.
I have a yes. Warden Marriott? I have a yes. And that motion passes.
Okay, that moves us to item number C as we go through the tabs from tab 4 to 13. So these tabs will stay the same unless there's motions to change what's within it. Deputy Warden Agar.
Grants. It's time to cut back a little bit on our process. We need to show our residents and ratepayers some fiscal responsibility. So even if it's a bit. So I will make a motion to cut the 2% inflation adjustment off the SLEP grant for 33,119. Their agreement expires in 2028. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Dennis, you second that? Okay, discussion on the motion? Second call for discussion? Seeing none? Oh, Councillor Loosely.
Just want to clarify, what page are we looking at with that on that?
Tab 4, and it would be page 8.
8. Okay. Thank you.
Not to rush it, but third call for discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? 2 opposed, 3 opposed. That's carried. Brian, oh, sorry. That's 4. It still carries. Any other motions for tab 4? Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I hate to sound like a broken record, but in regards to the payment to Strathroy Middlesex, I've stated my concern in the past only because it gets awkward when we support a hospital outside our jurisdiction. I'm okay with that, but I think to at least show our support to our local Blue Water Health, we should at least match that if possible. And I would like to move that we grant $105,000 to Blue Water Health. I'll ask for a seconder, please.
Seconded by Councillor Dennis. Discussion, Councillor Case.
Through you, Mr. Warden, to County Council. Seems like we revisit this every year. There was no request from Blue Water Hospital. And I always find this to be a very slippery slope. When they haven't asked us for funding, why would we go about providing funding? And when it comes to the Strathroy Hospital, to be very honest with the councillor from Troya, there's an awful lot of us that's our prime hospital. And that agreement was entered into quite some time ago, so it's important, obviously, to fulfill the agreement. I know the councillor is not asking us not to, but I have a real problem when we start adding things to the budget that aren't already there. Again, we're talking about trying to save some money. Deputy Warden, just made a comment about the 2% COLA adjustment. So I will not be supporting this. I find this to be a bad way of doing business. If Blue Water Health wanted to ask us for money, they would have made an application like everybody else did and made that request. So I just want to make sure that I'm on the record saying I'm against this particular motion.
Thank you. Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. First of all, I want to state it's just the concern of picking and choosing hospitals outside our jurisdiction. I think that gets very awkward. I want to also clarify that Blue Water Health was not allowed to address this council because we didn't accept any grants coming to council this year. And I do want to state they did send a request in a couple years ago that's been put on hold. They did clarify it, but it's been sitting on hold for probably 2 years. So they did request something. They couldn't this year, but I'm just trying to think to at least show our support to our local hospital that, again, the health and well-being, I think, is still important in our county, that we should at least match what we're giving them. That's all. Thank you.
I would just add for clarification that this is number 8 of 10 years, and it was committed by a previous county council. It wasn't anything to do with this council. I have Councillor Broad and then Councillor Case, I believe.
Thanks, Warden Marriott. I think we need to remind the politicians that Blue Water Health got $10 million. So we need to, we didn't forget about Blue Water Health. They got $10 million back a number of years ago. Healthcare does not go by boundaries. I have as many people as Todd does that slip to Newbury to Strathroy. That's their primary healthcare. The last time I was at Strathroy, there was 4 people there from Petrolia getting some services done because they couldn't get them done in Sarnia. So it's not only Don Euphemia, Watford, Warwick. This is used by everybody within our county. And you're right, this was a decision made by a previous county councillor. Why are we dragging this thing out? It was a 10-year agreement, and it's number 8 of 10 years. Let's get it resolved and move forward. But let's just remember, healthcare doesn't care about the boundaries. And my people use this as much as anybody else, and I think it's totally unfair that we keep pointing this out every year, every year, every year. They do great services over at Strathroy. They saved my daughter's life. If that's not worth a few bucks, well then so be it. We're lucky to have Strathroy there, and I get going outside our boundaries because we have some neighboring municipalities who refuse to do that. So be it. But at the end of the day, Blue Water Health did get $10 million from this county council. So let's not sit there and say that we've totally avoided them, because we haven't. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Case, and then I have someone over.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I don't think I could say it any better than my seatmate just did. Healthcare does know no boundaries at the end of the day, and I respect the Blue Water Health Group. I really do. We've provided lots of funding for them over the years. I've been here for a long time, probably next to Mayor Bradley, the longest of anybody else sitting here. And we've always respected the fact that we want to provide funding and we want to be a partner. And as Mayor Broad just said, there's an awful lot of us that use Strathroy Hospital as our prime healthcare center. So I think it's very unfair to keep bringing this up year after year and talking about this. Blue Water has been funded. I'm sure this group will look at anything that comes forward. I know right now there's a restriction perhaps on being able to ask for more funding right now. But this is an agreement, as you said, Mr. Warden, that's been in existence. I think it's the 8th or the 10th year. We need to honor that. And I do have a real issue. Every time we sit down at budget time that this topic comes up. It shouldn't be coming up. And like I say, I've said enough. I'm going to vote against the motion, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Cook, please.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just to follow up with the other councillors, those of us in the north, we use South Huron Hospital quite a bit, or our major hospital. We have as they said, there's no boundaries. Our health center in Grand Bend, they service a lot of outside of our area customers. The hospital service a lot of Grand Bend customers. We also go to Strathroy. I have no issue with giving them money, provided they've asked for something. I mean, talking about Blue Water Health. But at this point, there's no request. We put a motion forward a couple of years ago to restrict capital grants for that reason, just because we've got to maintain our budget. This is 8 of 10 payments going forward. 2 more years of it. I won't be supporting that motion at all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor White, please.
Thank you, Ward Marriott. And to just add on to my colleague, Councillor Cook's point, I think it's just important to remember that when we made this decision several years ago, it was really in light of the fact that we are facing undue pressure on a number of different fronts that do fall within our direct mandate. And healthcare, as important as it is to all of us and to our families and to our community members, it's simply not what we're here to do. We're not here to fund healthcare directly. That is a provincial mandate, and the more that we enable the province to get away with underfunding healthcare, the more they're going to continue to underfund healthcare. It's time that we stay in our lane and continue to send a signal to the province to step up and meet your requirements and fund healthcare appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Loosely, one more.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I certainly don't have any objection now regarding giving Strathroy the $105,000. That's not the issue. I think what I'm trying to say, and I know Strathroy's hospital is important, so is London, so is other municipalities. My concern is I would just like to show the support to our local hospital to at least match what we're giving them. That's all. Thank you. And I'll request a recorded vote.
Okay, and if there's no other comments, I'll ask Ms. Leger to take the recorded vote, and the randomizer is coming up. Sorry, Councillor Han.
I'm thinking I potentially have a conflict of interest. I'm on the board of Blue Water Health.
Okay.
Right.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Do I need to leave?
Warden, could we have the motion read back?
Okay, Councillor Bradley requests the motion read back. Ms. Leger, please.
So the motion is moved by Councillor Loosely, seconded by Councillor Dennis, and a recorded vote requested by Councillor Loosely that $105,000 be given to Blue Water Health to match the monies given to the Strathroy Middlesex General Hospital Foundation. And we are starting with Councillor Miller. No. I have a no. Councillor Sageman? No. I have a no. Councillor Veen? No. I have a no. Councillor White? No. I have a no. Deputy Warden Agar? No. I have a no. Councillor McEwen? No. I have a no. Councillor Bouchy? No. I have a no. Councillor Bradley?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Broad? No. I have a no. Councillor Case? No. I have a no. Councillor Cook?
No.
I have a no. Councillor Dennis?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Ferguson?
No.
I have a no. Councillor Han declared a conflict. Councillor Loosely?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor McRoberts? No. I have a no. Warden Marriott? I have a no. That motion is defeated.
Okay, we are still in tab 4. I'll ask one more time if there's any motions. Councillor Case, you have your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Warden, I would make a motion that we also forego the 2% increase for TSL on the COLA adjustment this year as well to match the same thing that was stated about SLEP. I'll make that motion.
Okay, and Councillor White seconds that. Discussion? Councillor Han.
I have a conflict of interest. I'm on the board of TSL.
Okay. Councillor McRoberts. Okay, Councillor Sageman.
Yes, if the mover and seconder are amenable, we've got one left standing here. I think we should do the same for CLCDC as well. Take off the 2% inflation adjustment on that one too, if the mover and seconder are amenable.
Mover and the seconder was, Councillor White, and he agrees, okay. Councillor Veen.
Thank you, Warden. I'll have to declare conflict as well.
Okay, we may not have quorum if we keep this up. So where are we at? Discussion on the motion after all the conflicts of interest? If not, I'll call the question, and it's recorded vote. Yes, sorry. It was requested by Councillor Broad.
So the motion on the floor moved by Councillor Case, seconded by Councillor White, and a recorded vote requested by Councillor Broad is that council reduce the 2025 grant given to TSL and CLCDC by 2%. And we are starting with Councillor McEwen.
So this motion is to not raise it, right? So, yes.
Correct. It would be to reduce those 2 grants by 2%. I have a yes from Councillor McEwen. Councillor Boucher? Yes. Yes. Councillor Bradley?
Yes.
Councillor Broad? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Case? Yes. I have a yes. Councillor Cook?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Dennis?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Ferguson?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Hand declared a conflict. Councillor Loosely?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor McRoberts declared a conflict. Councillor Miller?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Sageman?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Veen declared a conflict. Councillor White?
Yes.
I have a yes. Deputy Warden Agar?
Yes.
I have a yes. Warden Marriott?
I also have to declare a conflict as I sit on the board.
Okay. That motion passes.
Okay, so we're still in tab 4. Are there any other motions to come forward before we move on? Can't say, don't think anybody, there we go. Second call. Tab 5, please. This is the CAO. Tab 6, Corporate Services. Tab 7, Finance, Facilities, and Acquisitions Division. Tab 8, Infrastructure and Development Services Division. Deputy Warden Agar, please.
Thank you. I'm not looking to add anything. I just want to make a comment. We've spent $600,000 already on a roundabout in St. Clair on Kimball and Petroleum Line. I just want to, hopefully that's pushed ahead for 2026. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe If I'm speaking for Mr. Cole, though, that's what he's hoping for. Do you want to comment, Mr. Cole? Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Warden, to Councillor Agar. That is why we continue to include that money so that we could pursue further utilities, property, and design work towards that roundabout in due course. And 2026 would be the ultimate target. All of these have very large unknowns still at this time, but the total construction cost you will be seeing in future budgets, absolutely.
Deputy Warden?
Okay, I just wanted to, I seen reports from 26 to 30, and I don't want to see it in 30. There'll be 30 more deaths at that corner by then, so thank you. I trust you.
Anything else for tab 8? Seeing none, tab 9, which is Public Health Services Division. And moving on to tab 10, Social Services Division. Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. In regards to the page 6, and it's in regards to childcare, all I want to do is just state I'm really pleased with the county's direction and the long-term planning to continue on with that, because I think it's great for the county and surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley.
I have a question to Ms. Colasani. It's an overall general question on the budget. I believe you received an email from River City Vineyard yesterday. I received a copy of it, and they were looking for some funding to cover their security costs on one of the wings, to cover them through the fall. And if their option is just to close it, which would not be a good thing. Have you had a chance to assess that and how much that would cost if we were to move forward? They are being funded by the United Way. That's stopping, and it'll recommence in the fall, if I understand it correctly. So the question is, will the county be supportive of this type of funding? And if so, do we have any idea how much it is?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Through you, Warden, to Councillor Bradley. I received that request late last night. I have not had a chance to review it. I haven't had a chance to reach out to them to see what those costs would be. They're certainly not included in this budget, and we're fully spent, so that would mean we'd have to relook at this. But at this time, I don't know what it is, what those costs would be.
Okay, so will you be bringing something to the next meeting?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Through you, Warden, to Councillor Bradley. At this time, River City Vineyard does not follow the County of Lambton shelter standards, so we would have to have a conversation about that. Typically, our funding is from the province and the federal government and from the levy, and we would expect they would have to follow those standards. So it's more than just looking at what the costs are. We'd have to have an overall discussion with River City about those standards and how they operate.
I understand that, and that was outlined in the email to us. But will you be bringing a report to County Council to explain what you've just said and to take a look at the present policy the county has?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Through you, Warden, to Councillor Bradley. I hadn't planned on bringing a report. I was going to reach out to River City Vineyard and have that discussion, but certainly I can do a follow-up report.
Well, I think it would be helpful, and I'll move that motion, to have all of County Council, and I realize I just introduced this because I received it last night too, but I think all of County Council should understand the issues involved with this particular request. I think it's in the county's benefit. I'll move that for a report on, a high-level report on this request from River City.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McRoberts. Discussion? Deputy Warden Agar, please.
Question. So this is not a county facility, right?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Through you, Warden. That's correct. It's not a county facility. It's operated by the River City Vineyard.
Councillor White.
Thank you. So the question then, in terms of what should be included in this report, for me is, by high level, are we still anticipating then understanding where the gaps are in terms of the standards? Is that what should be included in this?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Through you, Warden, to Councillor White. It would be a very long report to go through our standards and, you know, what they follow and what they don't. I think it could be a high-level report outlining what their requests are, what dollars they're looking for, if we have those dollars, and then I think which parts of the standards they don't follow.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, recorded vote requested by Councillor Dennis. Oh, sorry, you just want the motion read. Thank you. Ms. Leger, please.
So the motion on the floor is moved by Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor McRoberts, that staff report back to council regarding the requests received from River City Vineyard, and that such report shall include the costs relating thereto.
Clear? Councillor Case.
Just one question, Mr. Warden, through you. Does this give our people enough time to put this together? It's a high-level report we're asking for. I think the motion reads to bring it to our next regular council meeting, not to a committee meeting, obviously, but I just wondered, does this give our staff enough time to get this report back to us? We're asked for a high-level report. I'm just curious, and I want to make sure that we give them the time they need it. Just a question.
Thank you. I'll ask Ms. Colasani to respond to that, please.
Through you, Warden. Yes, I believe that will give us enough time to do a high-level report. Thank you.
Councillor Dennis.
My apologies. What exactly is River City Vineyard asking for?
So, yeah, I haven't seen the, Councillor Bradley, would you like to respond to that, please?
Very high level. We're overcomplicating this. Their email actually that I just received last night, it wasn't copied to County Council, simply asks, there's a gap in the security on the one wing, and they're asking if the county would be would look at funding that security gap so they don't have to close the wing. So all I'm asking for is to review that email. It's pretty well self-explanatory, and have a report back to us, and then County Council can decide if it merits any further action.
Okay, Deputy Warden Agar.
Comment, I have no reserves about getting report. That's fine, but if they're expecting county to do something, why would they not send it to the warden of the county? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Mr. Mayor, they directed it to Ms. Colasanti. And because today is budget day, that is why I raised it. And as to your other comment, the county, the Inn of the Good Shepherd's an independent operation too. So is River City, different styles, different standards, different funding. And all this is asking for, they brought something forward. Today's budget day, so I wanted to get in front of County Council, and then you're going to get something back and you can decide what you want to do with it.
Okay, are we ready to call the question? All in favor? Hold them up. Oppose? I would say it passes. Yeah, motion passes. Anything else before we move on to tab 11? Tab 11, Long-Term Care Division. Seeing no questions or motions, tab 12, Cultural Services Division. And seeing nothing coming forward with cultural services, tab 13, non-tangible capital assets. If there are no questions or motions coming forward on tab 13, that brings us to the end of the tabs. I believe we'll be dealing with passing of the budget under our bylaws. That brings us to item number 9, notice of motions. I have nothing here at this time. And number 10, other business. Is there any other business to be brought forward today? Councillor Case, please.
Yeah, Mr. Warden, maybe through to our finance people, maybe can we get a tally of where we are? I know we haven't done a lot, but it'd be interesting to see where we are from where we started, if we could, please.
Good point, Councillor Case. Mr. Pilarchio, please.
Just a real quick summary. We started the day at 4.8%. We added approximately about $600,000 for the referred budget item for EMS, which increased the budget to about 5.4. And the last reduction regarding the inflationary adjustments for the grants, which in total approximated about $64,000 between the three grant agencies, brings your tax increase to 5.3%.
Councillor Case.
And you know, Mr. Warden, normally I'd be one that would be sitting here looking to get this thing chopped, even more so than where we are. But being where we are in the situation with the world as we know it right now and the threat of tariffs, not the threat, the actual tariffs that have been put in place, who knows, today it may change, tomorrow it may change again. I am comfortable with this number based on the fact that I did ask the question at our last council meeting if the county felt they were well equipped and capable of dealing with the situation of the 25% tariffs. And I think the answer I got was they felt fairly comfortable that they were well equipped to deal with it. So if that's the case, I won't try to cut further. But I would like clarification that this budget is a budget that's been set up that takes into effect the 25% tariff situation. And I also asked at the last meeting, I thought I asked for a report, maybe I didn't, on what the county was going to do to make sure that we did buy Canadian as often as we could. And then that, if that's not the case, that we buy local. So maybe I have those two questions, Mr. Ward. Maybe I'll ask you to forward those to the appropriate people.
Thank you, Councillor Case, and it has been discussed. I don't know if Mr. Pilarchio or Mr. Tifo wants, I know Mr. Tifo will comment on the second question, but Mr. Tifo? Or Mr. Pilarchio first?
Certainly, I can try to respond to both questions. Definitely, there's a lot of uncertainty about the impacts of the 25%, and given today's proposed recommended increases, we're going to do our best in order to manage within that envelope. We will continue to monitor the budget throughout the 2025 process, and if there are significant fluctuations on either our capital budget programs, by all means, we will be bringing those forward before we proceed. As far as the procurement policy, basically our procurement policy was always basically set up to determine the best price. And as I went through this morning, the goal of procurement policy is to ensure the county acquires the right goods and services when needed, when achieving best value through a transparent, fair, and competitive process. That's the basis of a procurement policy. Given that the events that have happened, it's definitely our practice will be to buy Canadian and buy local, even though that may be the pricing may be a little higher than if the world was the way the roll was like 48 hours ago. So there's definitely, that message has gone through amongst our county divisions and departments.
Follow up, Councillor Case, and then Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Warden. So I guess my question is, as these tariffs sort of come to light and exactly what it's going to mean, I know yesterday they were put in place, there's talk of today that maybe things will change. I just want the certainty, I want to know and have the comfort level when I leave here today that if we find these tariffs, as the Treasurer said, start to add up and start affecting us in other ways, that our administration will look at the current budgets for each department and try to find those savings as we move in to help offset some of these extra charges. I think it's very important that we know, us county councilors know there's a plan in place and that maybe that's the plan, because again, we don't know where this is going to go. I know in my municipality, potentially the tariffs could affect us in the sum of $500,000 potentially. So we've planned for that. I understand the county is a very large organization, and I did hear what the treasurer said, that they monitor it, but monitoring is one thing, and that's great. We should know exactly where we are. But I guess what I'm asking for is some clarity that if it happens and it's bigger than what we thought it was going to be, the staff has a plan to deal with it and to try to find those savings potentially within the whole budget of the organization. I'll ask that question to you, Mr. Warden, to whoever you deem to be appropriate to answer it.
Thank you, and I think Mr. Tifo was prepared for that.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And of course, we've taken a look at it to the degree that we can, because sometimes it's pretty difficult to predict the unpredictable, which is the experiences that we've had so far. But in addition to monitoring the situation, we certainly will react. And from a cost perspective, we do know that we've got a number of projects in all of our divisions that if they're adversely impacted in the sense that they are above a budget, we will bring back that issue to you so that the response can be provided by this board in terms of whether or not the project goes ahead. But before we go there, through our procurement professionals throughout the organization, is that the county doesn't exist on its own, doesn't act on its own when it comes to purchasing the goods and supplies that it purchases in the marketplace. And there are plans to have a broader discussion with all of our suppliers and contractors on how they intend to react to what's going on in the marketplace, to the extent that they can react as quickly as we'd like them to do so, so that we have an across-the-board sort of reaction and expectation set out there. So in addition to monitoring, absolutely, there is a plan for reaction, and at the end of the day, the plan is to ensure that this budget and that we remain within the terms and conditions and the parameters that you've set out in this budget, so that we don't come back here asking for additional funds or incur any deficits.
Thank you, Mr. Tifo. And we did have that discussion this week leading up to today. So, Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I personally think that we cannot live with this type of tax increase at 5.45. In January, it was reported that Lambton County, the unemployment rate is over 10%. That is totally unacceptable. I was going to say that we aren't holding any cards, but given the circumstances, that's probably not the best thing to say at this time. Also, I know this from my years in real estate, 64% of Canadians who have mortgages are going to be renewing in the next year. When they bought during COVID, when interest rates were at historical lows, they're going to be renewing in the next year, and they're going to be renewing at interest rates considerably more high than when they bought during COVID. It's going to wipe a lot of these people out. If you haven't noticed, you're seeing a lot of for sale signs around, and this is going to be devastating. This next year is going to be absolutely devastating. So forget the guy in Washington right now. There's going to be a tsunami of we're in a recession. We were in a recession long before the guy is in the White House. Our citizens can't afford this. So, Mr. Larry, is it $800,000 or $900,000 for every 1% on the mill rate?
Mr. Pilarchio, please.
It's $956,000 for.
We take out 1.9 million in change to reduce the levy from 5.45 down to 3.45 if we can. Or if we simply can't. We can't get used to basically 5.5% tax increases. That cannot be the new norm. You know, at one time, 2% was considered normal, and 5.5% isn't even inflation. So we can't get used to this kind of stuff. Our citizens are hurting. They're really, really hurting, and you're going to see a tsunami of hurt in the next while. We can't afford this, or our citizens can't afford this.
Okay, so there is a motion, just to correct the number, the 5.3 Mr. Pilarchio mentioned. So the motion, is there a seconder for the motion first? Councillor Loosely seconds. Open it up for discussion. Councillor Case.
So, Mr. Warden, I guess I wonder, again, the motion's been made. I understand the amount. I guess I don't understand where those dollars would come from. I mean, are we talking about them coming out of a reserve fund, or are we talking them coming out of the general budget, each department, so going back and looking at their numbers and coming back with something else? So I guess that's my question back to the mover of the motion.
I'll leave that to the expertise of Mr. Pilarchio as to where they would most reasonably come from. I was assuming reserves, general reserve fund.
Councillor Loosely, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Warden Marriott. I think we've always done well in our reserves, and I know enough is never enough. We've gone from 34 to 40 million back 5 or 6 years ago to, I think we're looking at putting 63 million. We're looking at putting 7 million in this year. I think reducing it by, if you take the 2% or it'll be 1.9 million and $12,000. So instead of putting in 7.8 million, 50,000, it would reduce it down to 5.9 million, almost 6 million. So instead of putting $7 million into reserve, we would take that money out of reserve to reduce the budget by 2%. And I support that. Thank you.
Councillor Dennis.
Like reserves are a rainy day fund. It's a hurricane out there. What we're essentially doing is giving people back their own money to help them out right now. We're in a tsunami. It's a perfect storm. What's going on with the tariffs from Washington, the uncertainty and this, of course, with the mortgage renewals, the recession, a lot of stupid decisions over the last 10 years. It's all coming together right now. So they can't afford 5.5%. We're going to force people out of their homes. And I don't need to tell people that people are choosing between heating their homes and eating and all that kind of stuff. They can't afford a 5.5%. We've spent so much money on the truly needy. It's about time that we give everybody a break, especially the people that actually truly pay the bills.
Okay, Councillor Bean and then Deputy Warden Agar, please.
Thank you, Warden. Through you to Mr. Pilarchio. What does that translate to the average house for money? My figures is roughly $40.
Mr. Pilarchio, are you able to answer that, please?
Thank you for the question. You may recall during our budget presentation on February 19th, I advised County Council that a 4.8% increase would impact the residential ratepayer assessed at a value of approximately $100,000 at $24. That was at 4.8%. So if you basically took a $1.9 million reduction, which is approximately 2%, probably be about a $12 savings for a house that's valued at approximately $100,000. So basically, if you're looking at $300,000, that's a $36,000 savings. It all depends on the value of your assessed property. But that, generally speaking, 2% is approximately about $12.
Okay, Deputy Warden Agar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Pilarchio. are the calculations right? So we were putting in oh, there you go. You're a real techie, aren't you? So just a quick question. Will that affect, you know how we're always talking about the credit ratings of the county, like AA, double C, whatever? If it went from 7 down to 6 million back into reserves, what would that give us on our rate? Not that rate, but the tax rate, tax levy.
Mr. Pilarkio, please.
So just to clarify the numbers, in this year's budget, there's about $18.6 million that's going into reserve funds, and there's about $18.1 million that's coming out other reserve funds. If you go to basically tab 14, I believe, of your budget binder. So, you know, your overall reserve fund balance is approximately $63.6 million, and that's significantly lower than it was 2 years ago, because we put money aside on some major projects such as the Lambton Shared Services Center, Kathleen, and so forth. Generally speaking, I'll just reiterate, is that reserve funds are, you know, considered low. Could it impact your credit rating? It can. It will potentially reduce your flexibility if there's some uncertain events that happen throughout the year, you know, specifically with tariffs. You know, we put the $1.9 million in for opportunities and, you know, I'm going to classify contingency. That provides us the buffer to deal with some of these uncertain events that happen. Council policy on our reserve funds, just a reminder that our total replacement asset value of all our assets are $1.6 billion. And I know 63 million may appear high, but when you're dealing with an organization that deals with long-term care centers, public health facilities, EMS facilities, and so forth, it's not a significant amount in the grand scheme of finance. $1 million would reduce your rate, but would also reduce your flexibility to deal with uncertain events.
Well, what would the rate go down?
Sorry, the $1 million, the rate would go from 5.3% to 4.3% approximately.
Okay, we had Councillor White and then Councillor Broad.
Thank you. And I understand the nature of the discussion here, and I think we're all concerned, especially with the volatility and the pace at which we'll just say Mango Mussolini makes decisions that affects all of us. But the reality is we've got a significant number of projects in front of us over the next number of years. Some of them have been waiting for a long time. Some of them have been needed for a long time. And we're doing our best to try and address all of these issues. Some incrementally, and some we're playing rapid catch-up. I can't justify moving any of these projects back any further. And if we start cutting now, we're going to be borrowing in the future, and it's going to cost us more in the long term. So the fact is, I think as we wade through the waters of the next year, we're going to have to depend on our staff who are dealing with these issues and with the numbers directly to come back to us with a budget next year that better reflects the reality as it presents itself. Because right now we really don't know what we're looking at. It's tough. It could change this afternoon. We've got another announcement this afternoon. We have no idea what's coming. So in the meantime, I think we just need to hold the fort, put our trust in the staff. We're all bearing the weight of this collectively, and as the year progresses, I'm certain we can make decisions that will benefit our residents as we are able to and as needed.
Thank you. I have Councillor Broad and then Councillor Dennis. Oh, and Councillor Cook online.
Thanks, Warden. I guess my question is to our treasurer. My information that I read, and which is totally opposite of what Councillor Loosely was saying, I'm showing we're going from 77 million in reserves down to 63 million. Is that correct?
Mr. Pilarkio, please.
That is correct.
So we're not increasing by 8 million, I think, as Councillor Loosely had said. So the request out there is to now drop from the 63.5 million in reserve down to 61.5. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have a hard time supporting that. As much as we can say ignore the guy to the south, we can't ignore the guy to the south. He's created enough current turmoil in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever. And then we definitely know that each and every one of us, it's cost us more money or gonna cost us more money. Things aren't settled there. So there's just no way under the given environment that I can support a $2 million reduction in the reserves to go towards the budget. Thank you.
Councillor Dennis, and then Councillor Loosely.
Okay, excuse me, yeah, thank you. Keep in mind, guys, when we increase taxes by 5%, 5.5%, if you do any investing, you've probably heard of the rule of 72. You divide 72 by the interest rate and it tells you how many years your money doubles. When you keep on increasing taxes by 5.5%, if you don't think that for 1 minute people take into consideration the taxes they're paying when it comes time to buying houses and locating in an area, this area is, well, not all areas, because they're not, there's St. Clair Township, their taxes are good there, Plimpton, Wyoming, the taxes are good there. But the fact of the matter is, if we keep on doing this, we should not be expanding government right now. This is the last, for example, the population of Canada has grown by 14% over the last 10 years, and the public sector has grown by 43%. And I know it's easy to blame the guy in Washington right now, but really we should be blaming the guy in Ottawa over the last 10 years for the demise of our country, quite frankly. He's put us in this position. We don't have any clout right now. But the fact of the matter is, guys, we should be serving the taxpayers. We shouldn't be so worried about programs and this and that. We should be doing everything we can to keep our citizens moving on. We should be worried about making government bigger and programs and all that kind of stuff. We should be worried about the guys that pay our salaries and that we work for, that elected us. That's who we should be worried about.
Okay, so I will remind council that the 900,000 to the CLCDC will be coming out of reserves already. So we're already lowering reserves by $1 million with today's decisions. And I just also remind, I think I seen a memo where the last 5 years, our total tax increases are still slightly below the total inflation increases, because 2 to 3 years ago when inflation was running at 5%, our tax increases were only 2 to 3%. So just something to note. So I had Councillor Loosely, then Councillor Case, and then Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. And again, I know this is a bit unusual because normally we don't use reserves to reduce the budget, but I think we're into unique times. And I think just to clarify, I know we've always taken money out of the budget. We've done that for projects, but we are putting in, and I want to clarify to Councillor Broad, we are putting back in and correct me if I'm wrong, so almost $8 million, $7.8 million. We're budgeting to put that into a reserve. All I'm saying is, let's not put that into reserve. Let's reduce that down. And I'll ask correct me if I'm wrong, but the budget shows we're putting that into a reserve.
I'll ask Mr. Pilarchio, but there's some going in, but there's some coming out. So I think the net result is what we want to look at. Mr. Pilarchio?
Through the warden, a great question. I think Councillor Loosely's talking about $7.8 million of a component of the 18.6 million that's going into reserves this year. And it's also important to note that there's $18.2 million that's going out. Prior year in 2024, to Councillor Broad's question, is that we were at $77.7 million. Given our projected balance would go in 2025 to 63.6. The council just approved a $900,000 let's say, loan that's coming from the reserve fund, which would even bring that even further down. So actually, in today's events, you're actually putting in, you're drawing more than you're putting in this year.
Thank you. Councillor Case.
Well, Mr. Warden, it's a situation where we're damned if we do, damned if we don't. And in all honesty, sure, we'd love to be able to give a break to our ratepayers. I know every municipal council that's dealt with their budget struggled with the same question all along. But what happens next year? So all of a sudden we cut the better part of $2 million out of reserves to help this budget along, which will give people some relief. I don't question that. And next year, all of a sudden, the tariff situation enters into the equation. We continue to see more strain on our social services department and all these things. And next year, we're sitting here looking at a 9 or a 10% budget. That's always been my concern. I've sat here long enough. I've seen this cycle. I've seen this movie before. So that is my concern. I mean, I do understand and get that we obviously want to try to make it affordable for the individuals that we serve. Obviously, everything else is going to be going up with this tariff environment. We all know that. I think I saw a piece this morning, the average household, this was American number, average American family would be paying $2,000 to $3,000 more just per year, just to get by. And I'm sure the numbers here are probably that, if not more. So I guess that's my issue. It's easy to take money out of reserves. It's harder to put money back into reserves. And where does that leave us next year? So I think there's got to be a happy medium, happy balance here moving forward, because again, I will stand on my comments about being concerned on what's going to happen with the economy, not just our economy, the world economy. And we saw what happened with the markets yesterday as just a little bit of a, I guess maybe a start in the whole process. So I guess that's my question and my problem. It's not really a question, but that's my concern. We cut the better part of $2 million out of our reserves this year. Where are we next year when all hell breaks loose potentially? And again, I'm not talking about being Chicken Little and the sky is falling here. I just want to be responsible in my position here at County Council. So that's my comment.
Okay, I have Councillor Cook, and then I think I'll call a question. Councillor Cook, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Warden Marriott. So just following up on what Councillor Case just said, if we do take it out of this budget this year, where are we going to be next year? Councillor White made the point about what has to be replaced. Your reserve dollars are for replacement of your assets. They're not there for a savings bank. They're not a piggy bank that you can take money out of when you need it. If we didn't like the rate to begin with, we already knew it was going to be at 5% plus when we started today's discussion. Why did we go through the exercise of doing a budget in the first place? If we only wanted to be at 2.5 or 3%, why didn't we just tell our treasurer right up front? This is I'd say a waste of time, but it's very frustrating to go through the exercise of preparing a budget, having it given to us, look at the projects we're going to be doing, and then all of a sudden turn around and say, oh, we're going to take $3 million out of, or $2 million out of our reserves. It doesn't make any sense to me. It is what it is. We have to keep the budget going. We have to keep our reserves going, because without them, our credit rating falls, then our borrowing rates go up. It makes us look weaker in the bank size. Plus, the projects won't get done. So I don't know. I just find this whole exercise that we're going through here the last 15 minutes very frustrating. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Cook, Councillor Dennis, and then Councillor Sageman, and that's it.
Thank you. Well, try explaining a 5.5% increase to your constituents. That's going to be a fun part when the next couple of weeks or months or whatever. That's going to be when you bump into them at the grocery store or the coffee shop. Try explaining that to them and see what they have to say. That's going to be real fun. But I'll tell you what, I will modify my motion and let's just reduce it by 1%, because it sounds like it's not going to fly at 2%. So let's reduce it just by 1%. And pardon me, Mr. Palarco, is it $950,000 and change? What exactly is that, sir?
That's correct, Councillor.
Compromise with that then, if the seconder will go for that.
I'll ask the seconder if he agrees.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so you have a chance to do, there's a compromise there, you have the chance to give your constituents a little break, and you won't have as much egg in your face when you see them in the coffee shops. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Sageman, you still want to address? No. Okay. Oh.
I'm just going to echo Councillor Cook's comments as well. I mean, we just spent how long going through every tab in this binder, and we managed to pull about $75,000 out of it. We added $900,000 to it. I don't think that if we could see $1 million of savings, we would have done that on one of these tabs. And if you want to talk about explaining this to your constituents, as Mr. Pelarquio outlined, we're looking at $12 to $24. We're not talking about saving our constituents thousands of dollars. We're not talking about money that's going to get them in or out of a mortgage, lose or keep their home. We're talking about $12 to $24. And I think that being financially responsible and saving for the future and making sure that we're prepared is very important. And again, I will echo that if there was $1 million savings here, we should have found it when we went through the tabs, and we didn't. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sageman. Deputy Warden Agar.
Here, we're talking about the 900,000 coming out. That's a loan, so that's going to be going back in. Am I not correct on that deal?
Well,
Josh.
Mr. Pelarquio, would you like to comment, please?
Just to clarify, when you take that out of reserve funds and you use it as a revenue source for ongoing expenditures, there's the expectation that that $956,000 will be there for the year after and the year after and the year after. So you're really kicking the can down the road because you're going to have to find that $956,000 every year.
Okay, I think we've exhausted this pretty well. Are we ready to call the question? Councillor Loosley.
I'd like to request a recorded vote, please.
Okay, requested by Councillor Loosley, recorded vote, and the randomizer will.
Can we have it right back, please, Mr. Ward?
Yes, Councillor Case. Ms. Leger, please.
Yep, absolutely. So the motion on the floor moved by Councillor Dennis, seconded by Councillor Loosley, that council reduce the levy by $956,000 so that the levy be reduced from 5.3% to 4.3%. And this is done through reducing the contributions to the reserve funds.
Thank you.
And we are starting with Councillor Bradley.
The answer is no.
I have a no. Councillor Broad? No. I have a no. Councillor Case? No. I have a no. Councillor Cook?
No.
I have a no. Councillor Dennis?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Ferguson?
No.
I have a no. Councillor Hand? No. I have a no. Councillor Loosley?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor McRoberts? No. I have a no. Councillor Miller?
No.
I have a no. Councillor Sageman?
No.
I have a no. Councillor Veen? No. I have a no. Councillor White? No. I have a no. Deputy Warden Agar?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor McEwen?
Yes.
I have a yes. Councillor Bouchy?
No.
I have a no. Warden Marriott?
No.
I have a no. That motion is defeated.
Okay, I'll ask one more time for other business before we move to the notice of bylaws. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Warden and County Council. I think it would be prudent for us. This is the long game, and I appreciate a lot of the very serious comments so people understand how we're in this for the long game as it relates to budgeting. So I'm going to suggest, at least I'll leave it to your discretion, Mr. Warden, in September or October, that we just have a mini review of the budget, because this is the long game. There's lots of things that haven't even been public yet that will probably become back to hurt us economically right across this country. So I would just suggest, I'm just going to move motion that we have a budget update in the fall, looking at, are there any other steps we need to take because of what's happened in the last 6 months? I think it's just prudent. And then maybe we don't do anything. But I do think we need to at least flag this, because it's going to be a rough 4 years, and we need to keep on moving around to deal with what's on the table.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bradley, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Pelarquio would be okay with this. Can you comment, please?
Real quickly, I fully support it. It's just part of prudent financial planning to to get a lens in September timeframe as to where we're at and where I think we'll be in the forecast period.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Pelarkio. Anything else? Councillor Dennis.
I think it would be a good idea. Hopefully, with a bit of luck, maybe our MP, Marilyn Ladu, could join us, because with the grace of God, there'll be a new a prime minister, and she'll be able to outline his economic plan, and hopefully he'll be doing just the opposite of what the prime minister is doing now, and that will give us all a glimmer of hope, and that's good news. That's very, very good news. I think it's a good idea, because we could sure use some good news.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll move on to item number 11, notice of bylaws, please.
And vote on it.
So I guess before we go to bylaws, we should have a general motion to approve the budget as is. So Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Bean seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? One opposed. So notice of bylaws, please.
It is moved by Deputy Warden Agar, seconded by Councillor McEwen, that bylaws 6 and 7 of 2025, as amended, be taken as read for a first and second time.
All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
And it is moved by Deputy Warden Agar, seconded by Councillor McEwen, that bylaws 6 and 7 of 2025, as amended, be taken as read for a third and final time.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. At this time, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting will be Thursday, April the 3rd. I'm not sure why it's a Thursday. Because of Good Roads, that's right. Councillor Bean, move to adjourn. And Councillor Lucy seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you to all the staff for many, many days of preparation coming into today. Please join me with O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true